Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here. For those watching at home or tuning in online, we certainly appreciate your attention. I'd like to start out by reminding you all that KAVU, KIX, and Magic 95 also air these press briefings live on their respective stations. I'll also remind you that the most accurate and timely local information regarding COVID-19 continues to be at our website, victoriatxoem.org, on the local health department's Facebook page, and also via telephone on our hotline, 361-580-5796. Going forward, we will be having these briefings on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. We will continue doing our daily COVID count and news releases after 5 p.m. And if the need arises, we can do an informative Facebook video on the days when we're not having a live press briefing. As of now, the hotline will continue to run from Monday to Friday, 8 to noon, and then 1 to 5 p.m. As of right now, we have 4 new cases today, bringing the total to 85. Please remember that we get results throughout the day, and many investigations are ongoing, so those numbers may change by our 5 p.m. count that we post to Facebook. Today we'll have Dr. McNeil, our local health authority, visiting with you all, Chief Boyd with the Sheriff's Office, as well as Chief Craig with the Victoria Police Department, and Mayor Raleigh McCoy. And we'll allow a brief period of time after each of them to ask any questions that you might have. I'll also share a few brief remarks of my own. But to start out today, I'll turn things over to Dr. McNeil.
Thank you, Judge, and good afternoon. As the Judge just told you, we have 4 confirmed new cases today so far, but please remember that these cases do trickle in at different times of the day now that we have multiple agencies testing for COVID. That brings our total to 85 cases in our county or in our region, and basically we try and break these numbers down for you so that people can have a little bit better understanding. I don't get the demographic information daily, or usually when I get it, it's past the time of our press conference, so I can't tell you any demographics on the 5 new cases, but I can, the 4 new cases, but I can tell you that 17%, we're sitting at 17, which is 20% of these being attributed to community transmission. And remember that community transmission occurs when we don't have a set person that the infected individual came in contact with, so we assume that they got it somewhere in the community. These are of significant concern to us because as community transmission increases, it greatly increases the risk of more people being infected. The good news is, I will tell you something good, besides the new cases, is that the new cases was only 4. That actually is a good thing so far. But the really good news is that we have 24 patients now that we are considering recovered. So 28% of what we have seen so far now have recovered from this disease. And recovered, there are 3 criteria from the Centers for Disease Control that indicate recovered. The first thing is that they have to have resolution of symptoms, so they don't have any further symptoms of the disease. The second thing is that they have to be at least 7 days past the onset of their symptoms, so we look at that. And the third thing is, of course, that they're afebrile, in other words, no fever for 72 hours without Tylenol or Motrin or any other antipyretic medications. So 28% are now recovered. The other thing, what I want to speak about real briefly, just a few words, and then I'll be glad to open it up for questions. Remember that right now we are still in the increasing phase of this, and I want people to understand that. I want people to understand that this disease is going to continue in our community, and it statistically can get worse. We have not reached the apex of our curve, and depending on which source you believe, we're not sure exactly when we're going to hit the top of that curve and start to diminish. We'll know when we do because the number of cases will diminish, and hopefully people will start to recover at a higher rate. So when that happens, then we'll be in a recovery phase. But right now, our curve is still increasing. So the importance to us to understand that is that we have got to be, right now, I consider us needing to be hyper-vigilant. We have really got to watch what we're doing. You've got to continue the social distancing. You've got to avoid crowds, of course. That rule is still in place. You need to wear a mask. I go out, I see probably only half the people I see wearing masks. I think every one of you should wear a mask when you leave your house. It's not hard to do. You can get them. It doesn't have to be a mask. It can be a facial covering. You can take your favorite bandana and tie it around your face. Just do something to protect yourself and to protect others. So please encourage that. And remember social distancing. And I say it every time I get up here. It's the only thing that we have to really help us prevent the spread of this disease. We don't have a vaccine and we don't have a cure. We have some vaccines being worked on and we have a lot of things that they're trying, and some of them seem to show some efficacy. So please continue your social distancing, stay away from people, wear your masks, and just be careful with everything you do. Okay? Stay home whenever you can. Okay, I will tell you this also. We currently, they always ask, so I'll tell you that we have 11 patients hospitalized right now with diagnosis of COVID-19. 3 of those are in the intensive care unit, and they're all relatively stable. But just by definition that they're in the ICU, that means that they're critically ill, but they are stable at this time. We're continuing to follow that, and we'll update you on that every day. Okay, any questions that I can answer?
Just to clarify, are all 11 of those hospitalized Victoria County residents?
These are Victoria County residents that I'm talking about.
Okay.
The question was, are all 11 of those patients Victoria County residents? And the answer is yes.
And have any new patients been transferred or admitted to PAM North, given that it's now meant to be a COVID-only facility?
I know that they were talking about transferring some patients in because they had called me the other day when we were discussing lifting their order, but I do not have the information if they've specifically done it yet.
And on Friday, a local nursing home disclosed that somebody connected to their facility was tested positive. Just because of that group being at higher risk, do we have any information about whether other folks at that nursing home are being tested, residents or other employees?
The question was concerning a local nursing home that had the possibility of had a confirmed employee or patient. I'm not sure. I don't have the demographics on that, but I can tell you this, that right now we know of no imminent threat whatsoever to any healthcare facility or nursing home other than what we've already reported. So there is no imminent threat to a nursing home in Victoria at this time.
Do we have any update on testing supplies that local doctors or clinics are reporting, and any update on when our drive-through site might be able to reopen?
Update, the question is update on testing availability in our area. So we've talked about limiting or not being able to continue the testing center at the community center. And that was for several reasons. One, because the numbers had gone down, and that's simply because the commercial testing that's now available, the walk-in clinics in town, are able to do it. And I spoke with one of the owners of, or one of the managers of one of the walk-in clinics today, and they have ample testing supplies, and they have the ability to do a lot of testing right now. The state also is increasing or ramping up their ability to do testing. Everybody is ramping up their ability, and I'm not saying that we have the ability to test everyone yet, but we're getting better, and we do have enough of that available that we didn't see the need to continue at the community center. If things were to get bad, then we would certainly be able to reopen that if needed. The big limiting reagent has always been getting the testing supplies. Now we have the laboratory capability of doing the testing. Now we're having a shortage of the actual swabs and the things needed to provide the test to them. But that's being worked on as well. This is an ongoing, I'm going to have to say it again, this is a fluid situation, but we are working daily to help that.
Doctor, you mentioned there are 3 patients currently in ICU. Since the beginning of the first patient being diagnosed or being sent to ICU, how many have recovered?
As far as the ones that have recovered, I don't have that exact number. Of course, I would know if there were any fatalities, and I know of none of those as well. So I would have to assume that there were more. And I know that there were some patients that I can tell you for sure of 1 or 2 patients that I know that were in the intensive care unit that have been moved out to regular rooms now, indicating that they are not critical any longer.
Just a question, someone had pointed out that we have a similar number of confirmed cases as Nueces County, which has obviously a much larger population. Any ideas as to why? If it's because we're testing more, or just we have a greater level of community spread here?
Well, if you look at the number of patients that we've tested, Number that we have reported is at least 800 people have been tested. I think that was similar to the number that Nueces County had. I can't quote that because I don't watch their numbers. But I can tell you this: if you take their per capita or their number of patients, the number of people they have there, and the number of people that we have, then we have tested probably a higher percentage of those patients. The 800 is probably on the light side. 800 was a day or two ago, and I know now that walk-in clinics are testing a lot more patients. I have no way of knowing, but I'd say that the number tested in Victoria is certainly higher than 800.
And certainly the outbreak at PAM North
Right.
has inflated our numbers. The majority of our cases have been attributable to that outbreak. So removing that from the equation, Nueces County would have a lot more than we do. Any additional questions? Okay, very good. Well, Dr. McNeil, we'll let Chief Boyd, who I believe is waiting outside, go ahead and come on in while you step out.
Thank you very much.
And Chief Boyd should be stepping in momentarily to give an update on enforcement-related statistics. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Judge. As you are all aware, we've had quite a bit of interest with regards to the enforcement of the orders that are going on. I want to start off by saying that prior to the holiday weekend, the task force consisting of the Victoria County Sheriff's Office, the Victoria Police Department, and Constable Gary Schmeckel were able to make contact with well over 600 businesses throughout Victoria, the city of Victoria, and the county of Victoria. Over the weekend, from Thursday through Sunday, the Victoria County Sheriff's Office responded to 16 calls regarding potential violations of the orders. One call was at a home improvement store. We responded, contacted the manager. There were no violations that were found there. 3 calls were to different parks. We responded to those locations when we made contact with people and educated them on the parameters of the order. They complied and left. The other calls were to residences and apartment complexes. Some of those calls were we were unable to locate any violations. On the others, however, when we made contact and advised the people that were partaking of the order and the potential violation of the order, they all provided voluntary compliance at that point. So over the weekend, the Sheriff's Office did not issue out any citations or make any arrests as a result of the orders.
Very good. Any questions for Chief Boyd related to enforcement, law enforcement issues?
Not quite on enforcement, but have there been any reports of price gouging reported to your office in local businesses?
No, ma'am. We haven't had any reports of that, but those are typically sent to the state of Texas, and they have divisions that handle any price gouging. That's not something that's typically handled at a local level.
And for the apartment complexes, homes, were those folks mostly having holiday celebrations and who weren't aware, or kind of what was the situation there?
Predominantly, that's it. People trying to get together over the holiday on the weekend, not aware of the order that's in place, or not aware of the details. And so once they were educated, they provided voluntary compliance, which is our overall goal in the first place.
Okay. And just to confirm that the 16 calls you responded to, those are just within the county, correct?
They were in the county and in the city,
Okay.
but they were calls that came into the sheriff's office. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
It's not really about violations, but you guys put the stay-at-home order until April 30th. Do you have any idea if that will be extended right now, or you're not sure?
That is something that is determined by the Commissioner's Court and by the City Council at the direction of the judge and the mayor. That's not something law enforcement does not enact laws. We merely enforce laws, and that's a constitutional issue.
I could speak to that briefly. And to be clear, you're referring to the orders or the disaster?
The orders.
Okay. It's the City Council and the Commissioner's Court that extend or could extend the disaster declaration, but the orders themselves are from the county judge or the mayor. And to that point, about the extension of that. A lot of it has to do with what the governor plans on doing. The time frame that we put for the local order we have mirrored the governor's executive order. There's speculation about what he may or may not do. He has indicated later on this week he'll be making an announcement possibly related to that, but he hasn't indicated anything about that. It would certainly be my hope that we could return to some sense of normal going into May, but at this point we don't know that. Other questions? And Chief Craig with the police department will be here at the next round to answer any specifics on his end.
Judge, you mentioned last week that specific to Victoria County, that some of our orders were a bit more stringent than Governor Abbott's. Would there ever become a situation that we would be less stringent than the Texas, than the governor's orders? Say, for instance, if we went a week without any new reported new cases of COVID, would that justify or would that warrant a plea to the governor to be less stringent?
I would say, I could see a scenario in which that could be the case. And I had a few remarks I was going to share here, and touching briefly on that, possibly. I mean, the biggest issue in my mind is our local community, our local conditions. And so that's what I would be looking at there. I think in terms of dealing with a virus outbreak, uniformity is a good thing that helps slow the spread. But at the end of the day, I look most intently at our own community, and I wouldn't remove that possibility, take that off the table.
I have just one more question for Chief Boyd. I'm just curious, is general crime down or arrests down overall, and any theories as to why or why not?
Yeah, at this point in time, our overall call volume is down. That's probably as a result of the orders that are in place and the fact that people are wanting to stay in and try to remain as healthy as possible.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, if not, I had a few brief remarks myself. And Chief, you can stay here if you'd like in case a question arises at the end that's more law enforcement related. But wanted to start out by thanking the residents, the many residents in our community who are acting responsibly and giving this virus the attention that it's due. Like I've mentioned previously, it is responsibility and not orders or mandates that are most effective and most needed at this time. I want to especially thank our local pastors and churches who used technology over the weekend or improvised in other ways to hold church services and share the joy and hope of Easter Sunday with the community, while also keeping the community safe at the same time. Those efforts are important because we are in a phase of moderate community transmission in Victoria County. I know there are some folks who are requesting from Dr. McNeil and others a map of where COVID-positive individuals have been so they can know what to avoid. It's safe to assume you could encounter a COVID patient anywhere. We know that people can share COVID even before they're symptomatic. So it goes back to the CDC recommendations, hand washing, social distancing. It could be encountered anywhere. So having a list of up-to-date businesses that everybody's visited, that's less helpful than proactively following the hygiene, social distancing guidelines in place. At the same time, we're taking a lot of important steps from a public health standpoint. There also has to be steps taken to get our economy up and running again, which is a legitimate and a critical public health issue. Like I mentioned a second ago, Governor Abbott announced on Friday that towards the latter part of this week, he'd be unveiling the details of a plan of his to get the economy rolling again. And I'm eager to see those details because we don't live in a bubble here in Victoria County. Our local economy is part of our regional, state, and national economy. And many of the factors impacting us in Victoria are really not under our direct control, whether that be the oil prices that have fallen off the cliff recently to Caterpillar having supply chain issues and demand issues worldwide that temporarily shut that facility down. We don't operate in a vacuum. But even so, it's a priority of mine to ensure that the abilities we do have locally, the steps that we can take locally, are used to the maximum benefit in getting our economy up and running again. And I'll be especially eager to see what the governor details in his plan, because like I mentioned here last week, when that executive order went into place on April 1st, one of the things that it did was to specifically remove the ability of local officials to do anything inconsistent with that order. And that ties back to the question you were asking about, is there a scenario when we might do something inconsistent? I wouldn't rule that out. I think, like I mentioned, that our local conditions are the biggest things we're looking at. Our local health experts, Dr. McNeil, our epidemiologist. So I do look at May 1st as a goal that we need to shoot for to getting businesses up and running again. But again, that's not something that locally we can wave a magic wand and cause to happen. We're very much a part of our regional and statewide economy, national economy, and so a lot of that is outside of our control, but I am committed to use what abilities we do have to the most effective extent possible. The executive order that defines and details the essential versus non-essential distinction does create a lot of problems that I'm not happy about, a lot of interpretation issues. So going forward, I am looking to May 1st as the opportunity to get things rolling again, because that's an important consideration. The economy, people's jobs, is not just an economic issue. It really is a public health issue with public health ramifications. So we're balancing two extremely important efforts, slowing the spread, COVID-19 public health, and at the same time accounting for and addressing needs and concerns of our business owners, really everybody is affected. And so it's a difficult balance, like I've pointed out before, but one that we assess and analyze every single day. So that's just a few comments I had there. Anything additional for either myself or the chief before we let the mayor and Chief Craig come up here?
What would that look like if you were to open up businesses? So now there's a bottom line essential businesses. Would they be two tiers of essential businesses to roll out, or how would you do it?
I think we will all look to see what the governor does in his plan as far as the details there. Again, with what he did, he specifically removed a lot of our local ability. But I could see one change being that we are less eager to try and define what the governor meant in some of these vague orders, and more so wait for that to happen from him. You know, one issue related to that arose over the weekend with golf courses. It had been our local opinion that golf courses were within the realm of that recreational carve-out in the governor's executive order. So, in my point of view, I thought those would remain open. Of course, the governor later came out and clarified, saying that no, that's non-essential, but there's still a mechanism in which people can golf if employees aren't there. So that led to some confusion that was, I think, incorrectly attributed to preferences we had locally when they really weren't. We were looking at direction from the state on that. So as much as that creates some challenges, some inconsistencies in fighting a virus, I'd go back and say that consistency is helpful to the extent possible.
And Chief Boyd, just quickly, I just wanted to clarify that the plan for policing compliance with the stay-at-home orders is to respond to complaints or reports that you get, from callers?
Yes, that's what we've been doing. We've been receiving, when we receive complaints, the deputies go out and respond or make phone calls to those individuals,
Okay,
yes.
for the foreseeable future, that'll be the primary policing strategy for
Yes, yes.
Chief Boyd, obviously you're making arrests and have detainees over the past month. What procedures are you taking place now to protect, number one, your staff, and to protect prisoners from each other with regards to new detainees coming in to protect if there's any COVID-19 possibilities?
Just remember back that this is not the first problem that we've had from a health-wise standpoint. We dealt with Ebola a few years ago, and we set up measures within the jail to try to protect against Ebola coming into the jail. So what we have is we have a phased-in approach, where if an individual is brought in, everybody who comes in is scanned and questioned with regards to potential COVID-19 infection. Anybody who has a fever is separated before they're brought into the jail. They're monitored. Once they do come into the jail, we have a phased-in approach in order to protect the existing inmates from being infected by incoming inmates. We have a staggered approach for getting them in over a 14-day period. So we've made available space to take those precautions and ensure that the health of the inmates and the staff is well taken care of. So there's a methodical approach to getting that done.
Well, we certainly appreciate everybody's time. The chief and I'll now step out and let Chief Craig and Mayor McCoy come on in. Thank you all very much.
Good afternoon. We're here this afternoon to follow up with the judge and Chief Boyd, and I have with me today Chief Craig, who's going to give you a report upon this weekend and how the compliance with our orders went. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. I'm going to give you an update on the enforcement action that was taken on this weekend. Overall, we are seeing the vast majority of our community that are pulling together in support of the current stay home, stay safe order. We did see a number of events that did occur over the weekend. Total calls was a total of 28. These are between Saturday and Sunday, so 28 different calls for service. 11 of those resulted in investigations that determined there was no violations of that order. We issued 16 advisals, verbal advisals, and we filed one criminal investigation offense report that will be presented to the district attorney's office at a later point in time for case filing considerations. Together, working with the Victoria County Sheriff's Office, we've participated in over 600 business education calls, and we had, over the weekend, we had one complaint that a business was operating, a non-essential business was operating in violation, and that was unfounded. And that's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Well, as we've said before in these meetings, we've been proactively dealing with the situation when we put in place orders some time ago, right there at around April 1st. And many people ask us about where we are on our chart, and we've been in phase 3 for quite some time. And the orders that we put in place were done preemptively to already stem the tide in case we got into more outbreak of community cases. And so we've always tried to stay ahead of the curve in everything that we've done up to this point. And I feel quite confident that what we are doing is working. We had our spike last week a little bit in cases. A lot of our cases are clearly associated with the Pam North outbreak that kind of skews the numbers a bit. But I'm convinced that we're on the right track with what we're doing, and I think that after this week, we're going to know a heck of a lot more. If there was any impact from the Easter weekend, it ought to start showing up by the end of this week. So I feel very confident that we're on track with what we're doing, and that the orders we have in place for what we know at this point in time are adequate for what we need to be doing in Victoria. I can tell you that we meet usually every morning, and we will still have our policy command meetings. That's when the judge and I in a room with the health experts and various people from the command, and that's how we keep a lid on what's going on a daily basis. So even though we may not have briefings every day this week, we will have these meetings, and we'll continue to do so as we analyze what's going on in our community. And it's like I said the last time, when we see the need to act, we will act. And you can rest assured about that. But we'll act based upon facts and data, and that's the driving thing that we look for when we take action in what we do. And I go back, as I say, and I've said at this table now for almost a month, whether we ask you to follow the orders, whether we command you to follow them, you still have a personal responsibility in looking out for yourself and your family, and you take the responsibility to follow the orders, even when you hear reports that others may not be doing so. That's certainly not an excuse for you not to follow the rules. I remember when my mother and dad used to tell me that very thing. Just because somebody else is breaking the rules doesn't mean you need to break the rules. So we hope that our community stays on the track that they're on. I think by and large, overall, our community has responded well. I like the approach that our law enforcement has taken, primarily as an educational tool. When you reach out to, I think, Captain Boyd said there were over 600 businesses that were visited. I think education and knowledge is the best weapon we have against this virus, and so we'll continue to do that. And I think that overall we'll get more compliance that way by educating people. I know we like to think that everybody gets the message, that everybody's watching this press briefing, that everybody reads the newspaper, everybody watches the news, but that's not often the case. There are people out there that just simply are uninformed, and I think that our law enforcement officers, in the way they've been handling it, informing people, and by and large the reports that I get or that most people are very compliant when it's pointed out to them the things that they're not doing properly. So I would hope we would continue doing that as a community, and I have have the utmost confidence that we will. So now I'll open it up for any questions.
Mayor McCoy, will you be increasing the hours for the public hotline, given that there will be only 3 briefings per week?
Well, our hotline, right now, we've had over 2,500 calls since we put the hotline in place. And I might say that a lot of communities don't have a hotline, and many of them, the size of Victoria, don't. And so I think we were one of the first communities that actually set up a hotline. But we had we've had about 2,500 calls total since we instituted it. Back in when we did the first orders, the stay-at-home orders and things, and then when we had the large number of cases that came, we had about 400 calls per shift at that point in time. Those are now dropped down to about 40 per 4-hour shift. So I think the community, in large part to the work that y'all are doing, putting out the word, helping us get the word out, you the media, has indicated that we're probably okay with not having it, manned like it was. We intend, though, to have the hotline open. We'll have probably fewer staff on it, but it will be open Monday through Fridays as we begin. But I can tell you that when the news last week kind of came at the end of the week, that we did activate it for Saturday just to see, and there were very few calls. So we kind of use the hotline as needed. We certainly want to have it available when we sense the community needs it, and so that's the way we're reacting to it. And any major announcement, any major change, we would probably up the hours and the staffing of it.
And is that the rationale behind decreasing the briefings, or is there other thinking behind
I
that?
think so. I think, I think we're pretty steady as she goes right now. I think Dr. McNeil and, of course, Brittany, our epidemiologist, tells us, we've said from the beginning that we're going to be on this curve, this rise. It is moving out. I think everything that I've studied, everything I've read, probably indicates that it's going to go on till the end of April, which is, by the way, when orders go out of date on April 30th. I've read where it could possibly go into the first week of May, but we're tracking it, and we will know. The numbers will tell us. We can speculate on it all we want, but it's the numbers that will tell us where we are. So we just felt like that in that situation that we could adequately get out the information to the media on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But as I've always said, if something changes, that will change too. Don't think that we're not going to respond to a significant change in the status quo. But we will still be providing all the statistics and all the numbers as we have been doing since the beginning of this event, okay?
Some places are made it mandatory to wear face masks when you go in public. Will that happen here?
Probably not, because it's a CDC recommendation. It's not a mandate. And that's the way we look at it. And a lot of people don't realize, and you have to listen, this is not meant to protect me. It's meant to protect you. When you wear a mask, it's to keep you from coughing and from you spreading the disease to someone else. But you also have to remember that when you wear a mask, that it could get the virus on the mask, and you still have to be extremely careful when you remove your mask to place it not on the street, but in a proper dispensary for that mask, and you must wash your hands. The whole key to all of this is washing your hands. Keep your hands clean and keep your hands away from your face. So don't get the false sense of security that wearing a mask is going to protect you. It simply lessens the possibility of you infecting someone else. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Chief Craig, you've mentioned that you met with over 600 local businesses. These are essential businesses, right? They're all 600 of them?
No, the 600 refers to all businesses in an education program where we ventured out to working with the county sheriff's office. We visited all businesses. So at the time we started, it was both essential and non-essential, but certainly now we're dealing more with the essential businesses now.
Can you shed some light on what the training consists of?
Mostly education purposes, talking about the social distancing aspect of things, talking about the need to have distancing within the aisles, the need to have some sort of ability to distance customers as they check out of the various facilities. So it was along those lines, and then there was quite a bit in the initial stages. There was kind of a bit of a discussion about essential versus non-essential, and there's some miscommunication. Some businesses thought they would be essential, and it turns out that after you look at the guidance that they were not. So we helped assist them through that and looking at how they can find out and then directing them to the proper resources to determine whether or not they were essential or not.
There have been a lot of restaurants, obviously, that's considered an essential business. Has anything changed over the past month or so within that business regarding health department? Any cleaning techniques that have been more stringent now than there were before?
I don't know if anything's changed, anything new. I know that I continue to hear health department personnel continue to push that is a best practice, to heavy, deep cleaning of restaurants on a regular basis to protect themselves and protect their customers.
Chief Craig, for the case that's being presented to the DA, can you shed a little more light? Was it a business or individual?
That was an individual that was at a gathering and was violated and given an opportunity to comply and did not.
And then of the, I believe you said it was 28 calls you received this weekend.
Yes.
Do you have a rough breakdown for how many were for businesses versus individuals or groups of people?
The vast majority of those were people related, either out in public. They ran, the gamut of several individuals out playing basketball to parties in front of people's houses. Only one business did we receive a complaint on that was a supposed non-essential business that was open providing services, but further investigation we found out that was not correct. That business was not open.
Okay. And then do you have the total number of calls you've received since the stay-at-home order was implemented?
I don't have that.
Okay, but it was 28 for Saturday and Sunday?
28 for Saturday and
Okay.
Sunday.
Okay. And then just generally, has crime overall, nonviolent or violent crime changed in the last couple of weeks?
I could tell you crime is trending down for the month of April. It was down in March, but certainly since we've hit April, we've seen a fairly significant downswing in overall crime. There are some specific crimes that we've seen a little bit of an uptick in. I've been asked about domestic violence cases and family violence cases. Those calls have stayed steady or increased, but generally speaking, most calls are down and most crime categories are down.
And then, Chief Craig, could you just briefly talk about how your officers are protecting themselves when they're going out doing kind of their regular work, how they keep themselves and their colleagues safe?
Well, they have a pretty routine regimen now. I would say that they have full PPE available, gloves, mask, cleaning solutions. They have a regiment where they clean their vehicles almost 4 or 5 times a day, certainly when they leave the vehicle at the end of their shift, and then the new officer does it again. So we have an adequate supply of PPEs that's available to the officers, and they're utilizing it when they come in contact with the public.
And then it sounds like you only received 1 call this weekend, but I'm just curious, do you expect, and would it be a penalty for businesses who don't promote social distancing or don't require that? Would that technically be enforceable by you guys?
That would be technically a violation of the order. Essential businesses still have to honor the social distancing aspect of the order.
Okay, but as of right now, that you haven't received reports that that's been a problem?
No.
Okay, great. Mayor McCoy, I did have one more question for you. For the emergency funding that's newly available to governments, what is the timeline for the city on that, and how does that process work? I don't know if you can shed any light on that or if it's still being determined.
Well, I know that we received a particular grant, and I think our staff is looking at how that can be dispensed. I think the governor today, if you caught his press conference, he announced how they are going to funnel some of the care money into our economy through some banks and the LIFT Fund, which will be more direct access to loans for our businesses. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about most of all, is the health and viability of our businesses. It really concerns me that many of the businesses are some shut down, and even essential businesses, even though they're open, they're not making nearly the amount of money they were, and many of even the restaurants can't sustain their full staff. So I'm really concerned about that, and I think we're going to be looking into steps that we can take as a community to help our neighbors as we move forward with this thing. I think it's goes without saying that we want everybody to stay safe, but from my perspective, it weighs heavily on my mind that there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance between the threat and the damage that's being done when our businesses aren't able to operate, and the people that literally don't have a paycheck. And if you think about it, people who have had viable businesses, own sole proprietors and stuff, and had it for years, they don't have the benefit of unemployment like an employee does. So they're especially vulnerable because they have no recourse. So I think we're going to start looking into ways that we can help shore up our businesses, because at the end of the day, they're the lifeblood of our economy. It's always been. In America, you talk about big corporations and stuff, but our small businesses have always been the lifeblood of our economy, both locally, state, and federal. So we've got to figure out a way to help those folks. Okay? All right. Well, if there's no further questions, then I will wrap it up with the closing argument. I've never been the facilitator, so you'll have to forgive me. If you can look for accurate information in addition to what the media here provides, if it is released on the VCPHD Facebook page or on our website, victoriatxoem.org. It is accurate Victoria information coming directly from your local officials. Facebook, you can look at the Victoria County Public Health Department. The website, again, victoriatxoem.org. The COVID-19 hotline, which is 361-580-5796, and that will be Monday through Fridays, 8 to 12 and 12 to 5. Suddenlink Channel 15 or 115 at 6 p.m. tonight. Fox 19 will replay this briefing at around 10:35 p.m. Following the closing of this briefing, a reporting will also be aired on KIX, Q92, Jack FM, KLUB, and stations. And for anyone with unmet needs, please call 211. If you're homebound and you have no way to reach out and you need food or you need assistance, please call 211. And then there's the 24/7 statewide mental health support line, which is 833-986-1919. Again, the statewide mental health support line, 833-986-1919. And going forward, as said before, we will continue these briefings every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. We will continue doing our daily COVID count, and we release it on or after, shortly after 5 p.m. And if the need arises, we can do an informative Facebook video. As of now, the hotline will continue, as I said before, on Monday through Friday from 8 to 12 and from 1 to 5. And thank you for your time, and we will see you again Wednesday. Thank you.